Mark Fellman, and then the gentleman in the back.
We've been listening a lot to the Republicans and what they've been saying. It appears that there's going to be a very clear choice between two alternatives on the Democratic side and the Republican side. If you were running for president right now, how would you...
I'm not, sir.
How would you communicate? What would the message be to you that talks about the difference in choice between the two parties? Outside of healthcare, we've heard about healthcare.
Well, it's the economy, stupid. I mean, that's, remember the famous slogan in the, it's always the economy, fundamentally, not just the economy. I mean, there are other things here as well. But unless we face an enormous international crisis, it's usually the economy. And if I were running, I'd be hammering away at that. Look, Obama inherited a mess. We were going right over the cliff. And adopting Herbert Hoover economics, which is what the other side wants to do, won't work. We tried it once, folks. You know, there's an old Greek saying. Any Greek speakers in the room? Nobody?
One.
Pathima, mathima, right? Pathima, mathima. What does that mean? It even rhymes. Things happen and you're supposed to learn from them. We tried Hooverism in 1929, and the result was the worst economic crisis in American history. Why would you do it again? What was it Einstein said? Definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. I don't get it. We tried it under Bush. What happened? The second worst economic crisis we've had, at least in the last century. And under the circumstances, I think the president, I have no doubt he's going to do this, has got to take it to the other side and ask the American people whether they want to elect folks who are going to essentially repeat Hoover and Bush all over again. It's clear it doesn't work. Now, having said that, would I have submitted the same stimulus program that the president did? Probably it would have been somewhat different, but I don't disagree on the notion that there had to be stimulus. And you know what is so maddening about this, folks? And here again, we've got to remind people of this, is that when Bill Clinton left office, in case you've forgotten, in 2000, this country was in fantastic shape economically and fiscally. Now, it wasn't all Clinton. I mean, there's no question that a Republican Congress, which was elected in 1994, even though Gingrich is kind of an off-the-wall guy, and a lot of the stuff they were proposing didn't make any sense. But there isn't any question that the fact that you had a Congress that was trying to restrain spending at the time had some impact on what happened. But by 2000, we had created 23 million new jobs in 8 years. We had the first back-to-back budgetary surpluses in a half a century. Clinton had reduced the national debt by $600 billion already. We had a current budget surplus of $250 billion. And before he left office, Bill Clinton laid out a plan, in case you've forgotten, for reducing and eliminating the national debt in 10 to 12 years and banking the interest savings for Social Security. Remember that? Now, the other side, and the guy that was running for the presidency on the Republican ticket, kept saying, it's your money, not the government's money, demand it back. Okay, that was the contrast. And when Clinton proposed his plan for reducing and eliminating the national debt in 10 to 12 years and banking the savings for Social Security, the national pollsters went out and they asked the American people, what'll it be, the Clinton plan or a tax cut? 2/3 of the American people said, forget about the tax cut, do what the president's talking about. Doing what? Essentially adopting a very conservative position fiscally, right? We finally have a surplus at last, for the first time in a half a century, but we know we have responsibilities out there, Social Security and this national debt, which at that time was the horrendous amount of $5 trillion. Remember? What's it now? $16 trillion. And Clinton said, let's use our good fortune to reduce and eliminate. Alan Greenspan was slightly hysterical. He said, if we eliminate the national debt, how can the Federal Reserve function? And I think Clinton said, well, we'll leave $500 billion for you, Alan, so you can, play around. That's where we were 11 years ago. And look at us now, 2 wars and 5 tax cuts later. So, again, I think I would be reminding people of that at the same time that I'm advocating what, in fact, the administration has been attempting to do, and pointing out that the opposition wants to do what Herbert Hoover did, with disastrous results. Now, again, consider the source. I'm not the world's greatest communicator, but it seems to me that
The gentleman in the back, and then Miss, is that Joe?
Sir.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Calico. Thank you for your straight talk this morning. It's very refreshing. And on the subject of communication, which we've spoken about as much as healthcare this morning, interestingly, I wanted to hear your perspective on what at first blush seems like the insanity of where we find ourselves with super PACs and hidden money and perhaps a hijacking of national communications. Yet, I wonder if the solution is to embrace it, that that's the new reality for our communications. Do we try to fight it? And really an overall question of what do we do this year for our communication strategy, with or against the super PAC mentality, I guess is the question. Good question. I'm a graduate of the class of 1960 at a well-known law school on the banks of the Charles River in Cambridge. I had some interesting classmates. Paul Sarbanes, who was the United States Senator, Sarbanes-Oxley, that's my pal, one of 3 Greek Americans, class of 1960. Bill Ruckelshaus, a good Republican, who was the first administrator of the EPA and a terrific guy. Ended up endorsing Obama, by the way, in 2008. And a fellow named Antonin Scalia. Even then, bright as hell, but even then he was to the right of Marie Antoinette philosophically. I mean, really way out there. And interestingly enough, it's been a combination of conservatives like Scalia and Roberts and these guys, and the American Civil Liberties Union, and as you all know by this time, I'm a card-carrying member of the American Civil Liberties Union, who have managed to persuade the courts, and especially this Supreme Court, 5-4, that money is speech. Now, I've read the Constitution of the United States at least 1,000 times. And these folks are supposed to be strict constructionists, right? Scalia and company. It's exactly what the document says. Where the hell in the Constitution does it say that money is speech? And John McCain, in his better days, because remember, McCain-Feingold was the last major effort, once said, look, if that's true, if money is speech, then 99% of us are effectively disenfranchised. And he was right. Money is speech. We've been regulating campaign contributions for over a century. We've prohibited corporations from contributing to political campaigns for over a century for good and sufficient reason. I mean, Congress was bought and paid for by the railroads back in the late 19th century. That's what produced all this stuff. And by 5-4, and I don't have to tell you who appointed most of these people, we now have a Supreme Court that's decided that money is speech. As a matter of fact, federal district court judge yesterday decided that you folks can't limit, as best I can determine, campaign contributions right here in San Diego. I don't get this. Now, there are ways to change it. One of it is to amend the Constitution. It's complicated, but I think we ought to start doing that, because I think there would be huge public support for that. And in the meantime, unfortunately, if the other side is going to play that game, then unfortunately, speaking as a Democrat, we got to do the same. I regret it. I think it's terrible. I will say this to you, speaking of running for office. If I were running for the presidency, I would be running against the Gang of 4 who are going to take over this government if I don't get elected. Who's the Gang of 4? Boehner,
McConnell, whoever the nominee is, and Karl Rove. And I'd hammer that theme over and over again. Don't let the Gang of Four take over the government of the United States. And I would, well, Norquist, my God, we produced him. A Massachusetts guy. Anyway, that's, but it seems to me Rove is fair game here, because he's doing a lot of this stuff. So I think you got to take him on. You got to tell people where this money is coming from. But it raises a dilemma. Same dilemma I had in 1988. Soft money. I didn't even know what soft money was. What is this soft money stuff? You know, I said I'm going to accept federal funds and that's it. Well, but there's soft money. What do you mean soft money? I'm serious. You know, I won the nomination. I still didn't know what soft money was. And so we had to do some of that. Now, I made full disclosure, which, by the way, they don't have to do under the Supreme Court decision. And I think it's one of the worst decisions in history. But that, unfortunately, is what we face, and I think you've got to attack it on all fronts simultaneously. But I think you want to make it an issue in the campaign, without a doubt. I don't know how you feel about the Gang of Four. I kind of like that, but could be other things.
Laura Walsher, but I just to make a comment that you may not know about this man. When he was governor, he rode the T, the trolley, to work every day and home without security. This is a very, very frugal guy, but also a respecter of the public purse. Laura Walsher.
You know, you can't be the son of Greek immigrants and not be frugal. I mean, it's just, you know, economia michali. How many times did my father say that? You know, be thrifty, save it, don't spend it. You know, never borrow and owe nothing. I mean, this kind of stuff. But George is too kind. Look, I've been riding the T since I was 5. So is Kitty. And if you're a mass transit advocate, as I was, and if you're asking your citizens and taxpayers to put up a lot of money to transform the T into what is now one of the best public transportation systems in the country, how can you be driving around in a Cadillac with 10 state troopers? I mean, it's just the whole thing. Just, no, I'm serious, and it's phony as hell. In any event, I didn't want that. You'd be amazed, folks, at how much you learn as governor if you're riding a streetcar. Hey, Governor, can I talk to you? Sure, what's up? I learned more about my own administration on the T than I did this day. There's something wonderfully cleansing and refreshing about being on the T. And, you know, people will talk to you. And by the way, it wasn't bad politically. I mean, I still meet people who say, you're the guy that rode the T. No, you're the guy that rode. Poor Romney. Romney, they asked him once where Ashmont Station was. He didn't have a clue. I mean, if you don't know where Ashmont Station is, and you're the governor of Massachusetts, there's no hope, right?